Audiobook introduction. Name your price. There comes a moment in every life when we stop for a second and ask ourselves what truly matters. We realize that everything we desire, everything we dream of, everything we pursue carries a cost. Not always a cost in money, but a cost in something far more personal. Our time, our attention, our effort, our very being. We name that price every day, often without noticing. When we choose comfort over challenge, we pay with potential. When we seek approval, we pay with authenticity. When we choose truth, we often pay with ease. Every choice is a transaction, and the currency is ourselves. This book, Name Your Price, is not about money or business. It is about value. The value we give to things, the value we give to people, and the value we give to our own purpose. It is about the invisible marketplace within us, where desire, ego, and aspiration compete for control. To name your price means to become conscious of what you are truly willing to give for what you say you want. It is easy to declare goals, but much harder to see how much we are ready to pay for them. The price always reveals the truth. If you say you want to be healthy, but you refuse the treatment, then health may not be as important as you think. If you say you want peace, but continue to feed your anger, then peace is not yet your real desire. If you say you want to grow spiritually, but value comfort more than change, then your goal is still only a wish. The measure of a goal's importance is the measure of your willingness to invest yourself in it. That investment is the truest expression of value. And the environment around you, the people, the community, the influences you choose, is the means by which you make that investment real. To value your environment is to value your own path. You will hear a timeless phrase in these pages. Buy yourself a friend. This is not about ownership, but about commitment. The willingness to give energy, time, and heart to build true connection. Friendship and spiritual companionship are not free. They must be earned through care, humility, and genuine attention. Each person who helps you rise is a treasure, and the price of that treasure is your sincerity. Our greatest struggle is not with the world around us, but with the world within us. There's a constant negotiation between ego and purpose, between the self that wants to receive and the self that wants to give. Every day, we stand at that inner marketplace, and each thought, each choice is a bid. We decide again and again who we are serving, our comfort or our calling. But this is not a book about sacrifice for its own sake. It is about freedom, the kind of freedom that comes when you know what something is worth to you, and you willingly pay that price. When giving becomes joy rather than loss. When effort feels like alignment rather than burden. When you stop counting what you've given and begin to recognize what you become. That is the essence of Name Your Price. To live with awareness of what you value most. To measure importance not by words or feelings, but by the portion of your life you are ready to dedicate. To see that everything precious demands a price, and that the highest things in life ask for the deepest parts of you. As you listen, reflect on this. Every goal, every relationship, every dream is a purchase you make with your choices. Ask yourself what you are investing in today, what you are buying with your attention, and what you are still unwilling to pay for. This is your invitation to look clearly, to choose consciously, and to step into freedom of knowing your own worth. Because in the end, the question is never what something costs. The question is what it's worth to you. Welcome to Name Your Price. Chapter 1, The Measured Desire. Every goal begins with a spark, a quiet voice that says, I want this. Sometimes it's simple, health, success, peace. Sometimes it's something higher, meaning, purpose, connection. Whatever the form, every desire asks the same question in return. How much do you want me? We often say we want many things, but few of them truly move us. Desire without effort is only imagination. To know how much something matters, look not at what you say, but at what you are willing to give. The price you are ready to pay tells the truth about your desire. If you want to be healthy, will you take the medicine and change your habits? If you want to grow, will you trade comfort for discipline? If you want spiritual progress, will you give up pride and ease? Every yes costs something. Every no protects something else. Desire has depth. At the surface, it is a wish. Deeper, it becomes a decision. At its core, it becomes devotion, something you can no longer ignore. and each level has its price. A wish costs nothing. A decision costs time and change. Devotion costs the self that resists transformation. Think for a moment about what you claim to want. How much of yourself have you truly given to it? Are you willing to let go of what stands in the way? Or is it safer to want than to act? There is no shame in realizing that some things matter less than you thought. What matters is honesty. Seeing clearly what you are willing to invest in and what you are not brings freedom. It allows you to stop chasing illusions and start choosing with purpose. To name your price is to bring desire into reality. It is saying, I will give this much of myself because this is what I value most. It turns a dream into a direction. Imagine standing before your deepest wish and being asked, how much comfort, time, or ego are you willing to spend? Your answer reveals the true worth of your goal to you. The universe does not take promises. It accepts payment in attention and perseverance. There's a law that governs both life and spirit, the law of exchange. To receive, you must give. To rise, you must release. The question is never whether you can afford it, but whether it's worth the cost. We admire those who achieve great things, yet we overlook the price they paid. The artist's solitude, the parent's sleepless nights, the seeker's surrender. They all measured their desire and found it worth the cost. True desire is not measured by intensity, but by endurance. It does not fade when effort is required. It deepens. To measure how important your goal is, observe the trade you're willing to make. Distraction for focus, excuses for action, comfort for growth. Each trade brings you closer to what you truly value. Awareness is the first step. Notice what you spend your life on, what you protect, what you pursue, what you neglect. Your choices are your currency. You may find that you've been paying heavily for things that give little in return. When you see that clearly, you can begin to spend yourself wisely. The richest life is not one of possession, but of purpose. Wealth is measured in meaning, not in gain. Every act of sincerity, every moment of giving, every effort toward what truly matters, these are the real investments of the soul. To measure your desire is to measure your truth. And when you find something truly worth paying for, no price feels too high. You give not out of obligation, but out of recognition. Because what you receive in return is yourself, refined, real, and whole. Spend your life on what you value most. That is the beginning of wisdom. That is how you learn to name your price. Chapter 2, The Inner Currency. We often think of value in material terms, money, possessions, comfort. But beneath the surface of life, a quieter economy is always at work. Every thought, every word, every action is a kind of transaction. We spend pieces of ourselves with every choice we make. Time, attention, energy, sincerity. These are the true currencies of existence. They cannot be printed, borrowed, or saved indefinitely. Once spent, they become our past. And yet, we often give them away without awareness, paying high prices for things that bring little meaning in return. Consider how easy we trade peace for approval, focus for distraction, truth for convenience. We bargain constantly, sometimes without realizing it. Each moment of attention is a coin. Where we place it determines the wealth or poverty of our inner life. The wise person learns to recognize this invisible economy. They ask, where's my energy going? What am I really buying with my time? They understand that value is not in possession, but in participation. What you give yourself to, you become. When you invest your attention in something higher, learning, connection, service, you gain inner strength and depth. When you invest it in empty pursuits, you feel scattered and hollow. Your balance sheet is written in feeling, not numbers. Peace, clarity, gratitude, these are signs of profit. Restlessness, boredom, resentment, signs of loss. Every day, you wake up with a limited amount of inner currency. You choose how to spend it. On worry or trust, on distraction or purpose, on judgment or understanding. Most people spend unconsciously, chasing what feels urgent instead of what is essential. They end the day exhausted, not from lack of energy, but from misdirected investment. To live wisely is to spend deliberately. It means noticing what drains you and what nourishes you. It means choosing people and pursuits that return more than they take, not in wealth or praise, but in peace and growth. The spiritual path asks for the same awareness. Your progress depends not on what you know, but on what you give your heart to. How much attention you dedicate to what is eternal instead of temporary. How much of your self-concern you're willing to exchange for connection and contribution. This is a true measure of giving. When you begin to value the whole more than the part, the group more than the self, the goal more than the comfort, to the extent that others' growth becomes as important to you as your own, your spiritual wealth increases. You begin to feel included in something greater, and that inclusion becomes your reward. In the end, the inner currency of life is spent either on maintaining the self or transcending it. One path preserves what is, the other reveals what can be. Both demand payment, but only one enriches the soul. So ask yourself each day, where am I spending my attention? Who or what receives the best of my time? Am I investing in what endures, or purchasing moments that quickly fade? Your life is the record of these transactions. Every thought and every effort becomes part of your spiritual economy. When you begin to spend yourself wisely, your inner world changes. You feel lighter, clearer, more aligned with what truly matters. That is the essence of inner wealth, to use your limited resources to build something infinite within. When you understand that even the smallest investment of sincerity becomes priceless. Chapter 3. The environment as a means. No one rises alone. Every goal, whether material or spiritual, grows within an environment that either nourishes it or starves it. You can want something deeply, yet without the right surroundings, that desire slowly fades. The environment is the soil of the soul. What you plant in it and what you surround yourself with determines what will grow. The people around you shape your thoughts more than you realize. Their values become the air you breathe. Their words influence what you consider possible. Their presence can lift you higher or quietly pull you down. If you want to change your life, begin by changing your environment. Think of a seed. Its potential is complete from the moment it is planted, but it needs the right conditions to awaken. Sunlight, water, warmth. Without them, the seed remains only a possibility. So it is with us. We may hold within us great intentions, but they require an atmosphere of growth, people, ideas, and influences that remind us of who we wish to become. That is why it is written, "Buy yourself a friend." It means to invest in those who help you rise. A true friend is not one who simply agrees with you, but one who draws you toward what is higher. They remind you of your own potential when you forget it. They challenge you to see beyond your comfort, to act beyond your limits. And that kind of friendship is never free. It costs effort, attention, humility, and care. To value your environment is to value your goal, because the environment is the bridge between who you are and who you wish to be. It carries you across the gap when your own strength is not enough. When you begin to honor the people and settings that keep your aim alive, you multiply your chances of reaching it. Ask yourself, who surrounds me? Do they strengthen my best intentions or my weakest habits? Do they remind me of purpose or pull me toward distraction? Your answers will reveal whether your environment supports your growth or feeds your stagnation. To buy an environment means to invest in it, to give your time and heart to the places and people that cultivate meaning. Join discussions that awaken you. Spend time with those who strive for truth, not comfort. Seek communities that encourage authenticity and kindness. Such environments refine your perception and lift your standard of living from the inside out. In spiritual life, the environment is more than support. It is the method. You cannot move closer to truth alone, because the self always defends its boundaries. But in connection with others who share the same aspiration, the self becomes transparent, and something larger begins to live through it. The question, then, is not only what you want, but what you are willing to give to remain among those who nurture your highest aim. How much do you value the group, the study, the guidance, the friends? That is the true measure of your spiritual desire. When the environment becomes more important than your personal comfort, you begin to change. You learn to listen instead of argue, to give instead of demand, to see others not as obstacles, but as mirrors of your own work. Gradually, the goal and the environment become one, both expressions of the same longing for truth. No one climbs alone, and no one falls in isolation. Choose your environment carefully, for it is the field in which your life will unfold. And remember, every moment spent strengthening that field is an investment in your own awakening. The environment is not outside of you, it is the atmosphere that lives within your heart. Cultivate with care. It will carry you farther than willpower ever could. Chapter 4: The Price of Connection. Human connection is the most powerful force in life. It shapes our thoughts, heals our wounds, and reveals who we truly are. Yet it also demands a highest payment: the willingness to open, to listen, and to let go of ourselves for the sake of another. Real connection does not happen by accident. It must be chosen, nurtured, and often fought for. Superficial closeness is easy. Deep connection costs something real. It asks for attention, honesty, and vulnerability, the kind of currency few are willing to spend freely. When we hear the words, "buy yourself a friend," we may resist them. Friendship, after all, should not be bought. But the phrase speaks of a deeper truth, that every true bond requires investment. To buy, in this sense, means to value, to commit, to give of yourself. A friend is not something you own, but someone you earn through care and sincerity. Ask yourself what you are willing to give for the people who help you grow, not in money, but in patience, humility, and time. How often do you listen without needing to respond? How often do you give without seeking reward? These are the small, invisible payments that build the wealth of connection. We live in a world that prizes independence, yet the soul thrives on interdependence. We imagine freedom as standing alone, but real freedom is found in belonging, not as ownership, but as participation. Connection is not about losing yourself in others. It is about discovering more of yourself through them. In spiritual life, friends are mirrors. They reflect both your highest potential and your hidden limitations. When you value them, you begin to see that their growth is also yours. To lift them is to lift yourself. This is the essence of shared progress. No one ascends alone, but such friendship is not easy. It requires you to see others as higher than yourself, not in worth, but in purpose. It asks you to trust when you could judge, to encourage when you could compete, to give when your ego prefers to take. And each of those moments is a small price paid toward something greater than comfort, toward unity. Connection is the true marketplace of the soul. Ego bargains to win, but love gives the build. Each act of giving becomes an investment that cannot be lost. You may not always receive immediate return, but what you cultivate within compassion, patience, empathy becomes lasting treasure. Consider how you measure your relationships. Do you value them for what they give you, or for what they awaken in you? Do you keep score or do you keep faith? The answer reveals whether you are buying comfort or investing in truth. There is a sacred moment in every friendship when you realize that the other person is not there to please you, but to help you grow. That realization changes everything. You stop seeking perfection and start seeking understanding. You stop demanding and begin contributing. The price of connection becomes joy itself. When you pay with sincerity, connection rewards you with transformation. It widens your heart, sharpens your awareness, and teaches you to love without condition. You start to see the divine in others, not as an idea, but as an experience. And in that recognition, you find the deepest form of wealth. So ask yourself, who are the friends that make me better? How much of myself am I willing to invest in them? Am I present enough to truly receive what they offer? Every genuine relationship is a transaction of the spirit, one in which both give and both grow. The price may be humility, patience, or vulnerability, but what you gain is immeasurable, because in the end, connection is not something you buy. It is something you become. Chapter 5: The Inner Bargain, Ego and Aspiration. Within every person, there is a quiet marketplace, a place where two voices meet and negotiate the direction of life. One voice belongs to the ego, the part of us that seeks comfort, safety, and recognition. The other belongs to aspiration, the longing to grow, to serve, to reach beyond the limits of the self. Each day they bargain. Each decision is a transaction between these two sides. Ego says, hold on to what you have. Aspiration says, get what you can. Ego whispers, protect yourself. Aspiration replies, expand yourself. And in the middle stands a conscious self, weighing the cost, deciding which voice to follow. The spiritual path is not a single victory of aspiration over ego, but an ongoing negotiation. Every moment presents a choice to rise or to remain, to give or to guard, to love or to fear. Each choice has a price, and each payment shapes who we become. Ego is not an enemy to destroy, but a servant to retrain. It fears loss because it cannot see beyond possession. It resists change because it confuses comfort with survival. Aspiration, on the other hand, understand that giving is a path to growth, and that surrender is the opening through which truth enters. When ego bids for control, it offers ease, familiarity, and reward. When aspiration bids, it offers uncertainty, effort, and transformation. At first, ego seems to win easily. Its price is low and its rewards are immediate. But the things it sells fade quickly, leaving a quiet emptiness behind. Aspiration asks for more time, patience, courage. Yet what it gives lasts forever. The real art of life is learning how to value the unseen more than the immediate. To recognize that every act of restraint, kindness, or humility is a spiritual investment. To see that choosing truth over comfort is not a loss, but a gain of integrity. You begin to understand that what feels like sacrifice is really exchange. Lower for higher, small for great, momentary for eternal. The inner bargain becomes visible in the smallest moments. When you resist the urge to be right and choose to understand instead. When you give time to someone who cannot repay you. When you admit a fault instead of defending it. In those moments, the ego pays and the soul profits. You may feel inner resistance, that quiet voice saying, "Why should I give more? Why should I change first?" But if you listen closely, you'll hear the deeper voice answering, because that is how you become more. Growth begins where justification ends. No auction is more intense than the one within. Ego bids for attention with fear. Aspiration bids with love. The price is always the same. Your willingness to let go of the lesser in order to touch the greater. And every time you pay that price, something within you becomes freer, lighter, more whole. It takes courage to let aspiration win. It means allowing parts of yourself to dissolve, the need to be admired, to be right, to be in control. Yet what remains is not emptiness, but clarity. You begin to live not by reaction, but by choice, not by fear, but by purpose. Over time, the inner bargain becomes less of a struggle and more of a partnership. Ego learns to serve the higher aim instead of opposing it. Its desire for success turns into a desire for meaning. Its energy for self-preservation becomes energy for contribution. The battle softens into balance. Each day, you enter this inner market again. You will pay something in patience, in honesty, in humility, for whatever you choose. Ask yourself, what am I buying with this thought, this word, this action? And when you choose aspiration, know that even though the cost may feel high, the value is infinite, because in the end, the only real bargain worth making is the one where you trade who you were for who you can become. Chapter 6, Measuring Spiritual Payment. We measure our progress in many ways, by achievements, possessions, or the approval of others. But the spiritual path asks for a different kind of measure. Not what we gain, but what we give. Not how much we have, but how much of ourselves we are willing to invest in what is eternal. The question is simple. How can I know how much I am paying on the spiritual path? The answer lies not in counting hours of study or words of prayer, but in examining the heart. How deeply are you included in your environment? How much do you value those who walk beside you? How much higher do you hold the collective goal above your personal comfort? This is a true currency of spirit, intention. Your spiritual payment is measured not in actions alone, but in the motive behind them. You may give time without presence or words without sincerity, and the scale of the heart does not move. But when you act from genuine devotion, when your desire is to give, not a gain, every small effort carries great weight. To measure your spiritual payment, look at where your attention goes. Do you think of the good of the whole more often than your own benefit? Do you seek connection more than control? Do you strive to see others as higher, wiser, or more deserving? Not to belittle yourself, but to learn humility? Each of these shifts marks a step forward, a quiet payment toward your own transformation. You can also measure your progress by what no longer tempts you. When you stop needing recognition for every effort, you have already paid a piece of your ego. When you can give without expecting return, you have purchased inner freedom. When the success of others brings you joy instead of envy, you have exchanged isolation for inclusion. Spiritual payment is not about loss, it is about exchange. You give up the narrow sense of I to gain the boundless sense of we. You surrender temporary pleasure to receive lasting peace. You trade opinion for understanding and fear for faith. Each exchange brings you closer to balance with the higher law of life. The environment remains your guide and your mirror. It reveals where your heart still hesitates to pay. If you find yourself withdrawing, comparing, or resisting, that is where the next payment is due, not as punishment, but as opportunity, a chance to give more of yourself to the process of becoming whole. Ask yourself each day, how much of my time, thought, and care have I offered to the collective good? Have I treated others as partners in my growth, or as background to my story? Do I measure my progress by what I receive, or by what I can now give freely? True payment on the spiritual path is made with attention and sincerity. When your desire for unity becomes stronger than your desire for comfort, you begin to feel what real value means. The act of giving itself becomes a reward. You no longer calculate what you have spent, because you are enriched in ways that numbers cannot describe. In truth, the only measure of spiritual payment is joy, the quiet, steady joy of knowing you are aligned with something greater than yourself. It is the peace that follows effort, the lightness that follows release, the clarity that follows surrender. This joy does not depend on outcome, because the giving itself has become fulfillment. So do not count what you've paid, count what you become. For the more you invest in love, sincerity, and connection, the more your life gains its true value. And when you give everything, you discover that nothing has been lost, only transformed. Chapter 7. The Value Beyond Price. There comes a point on every journey when calculation ends, when you no longer ask, how much must I give? But instead wonder, how much more can I give? This is a threshold between effort and devotion, between striving and surrender. It is the moment when what once felt like payment becomes joy. At first, we measure everything. We count our sacrifices, our efforts, our victories. We weigh what we've given against what we've gained. But slowly, something shifts. We begin to see that what we've been paying for was never outside us. It was always within. Each act of giving has carved out more space in the heart, and in that space, something timeless begins to live. The true reward of the spiritual path is not a prize waiting at the end. It is the transformation that occurs while you walk it. When giving becomes natural, when connection replaces comparison, when the good of others feels like your own, you have entered a state beyond price. Value, in its highest form, cannot be measured. It is felt. It is the peace that no amount of comfort can buy, the freedom that comes from no longer needing to win, the quiet certainty that you are exactly where you should be. When you reach this point, you no longer bargain with life. You stop asking for guarantees or rewards. Instead, you offer yourself willingly, fully, because giving has become your nature. You are not trying to buy meaning anymore. You are living it. This is a paradox of true wealth. The more you give, the richer you become, not in possessions or achievements, but in presence, in awareness, in love. You begin to see that every genuine effort, every moment of sincerity, has already returned to you in the form of understanding and peace. The ego once asked, "What will I gain?" The spirit now answers, "Everything that truly matters." The ego once feared losing itself. The spirit discovers that in giving, it becomes infinite. When the price no longer feels like cost, the exchange is complete. You are no longer a buyer in the marketplace of life, but a participant in its unfolding. You no longer seek to own, you seek to serve. And through service, you find belonging not to a group, not to an ideal, but to the living whole of existence. At this stage, the world itself begins to look different. You see beauty in the ordinary, depth in the simple, and connection in the space between people. You no longer divide life into sacred and mundane, because everything has become a teacher, everything a reflection of truth. This is what it means to live beyond price, to see that every moment is a gift, and that gratitude is the only fitting response. You realize that all your striving, all your questions, all your payments have led you here, to a place where nothing is demanded, because everything is already given. From here, you live differently. You listen more deeply. You act more gently. You give more freely. You no longer chase what you lack. You express what you are. The marketplace has become still. The inner bargaining is over. You have named your price, and in doing so, you have discovered your worth. Now you understand that value is not something to be found, but something to be revealed through giving. That every cost along the way was never loss, but liberation, and that what you sought outside was waiting all along in the quiet center of your own heart. This is the value beyond price. To live with love is the measure, to act without demand, to see no separation between giving and receiving, and to know that everything you are and everything you give is already enough. Conclusion, the true exchange. At the end of this journey, you can see that life has always been a series of exchanges. Every moment asks for something from you, your time, your attention, your heart, and offers something in return. What you receive is always in proportion to what you are willing to give. To name your price is to live consciously, to recognize that your choices are the currency of your destiny. You do not pay with money, but with presence. You do not buy with power, but with sincerity. You invest your energy, your care, and your willingness to change, and the return is the growth of your soul. The true measure of value is not in what you gain, but in who you become through the act of giving. Each time you choose love over fear, understanding over judgment, purpose over comfort, you make a sacred transaction. You exchange the temporary for the timeless. In the end, you realize that the goal and the path were never separate. The giving itself was a becoming. The payment was the transformation. And what remains is peace, the quiet knowing that nothing you gave was ever lost, because it all returned as light within you. So go on naming your price, not in numbers, but in truth. Spend your life where it matters most. And let your every choice remind you that the greatest wealth is a heart that gives freely and a life that knows its own worth.